Welcome to Bears on Tap, hosted by Quentin Q. Crisco, Sonny Verma, and the one and only Ron Luce. Bringing you all the news, analysis, and opinions on the charter franchise, Chicago Bears.
The Bears are who we thought they were. Welcome back to Bears on Tap. My name is Quentin Crisco, also joined by Sonny Verma and a special guest, Trevor Gill, here. Tonight, we're here to discuss Omaha Production series in partnership with Vice TV. Show is called NFL Classics After Further Review. And this show celebrates and examines the greatest NFL games ever played. In this week's episode, which airs Wednesday, October 1st at 9 p.m. on Vice TV, Brian Urlacher relives the Bears' historic 20-point comeback against the Arizona Cardinals in 2006. They are who we thought they are game, the crown 'em game. So on that show, he's also joined by a Bears fan and comedian, Sebastian Maniscalco, along with the show's host, Kyle Brandt. So make sure you guys go check it out. But tonight, as I said earlier, we're joined by Trevor Gill, who is the VP of Sports Development at Vice TV and an executive producer on NFL Classics. Trevor, how are you doing this fine evening?
Oh, I'm great. Football season is roaring, and it's fun to look back, and appreciate you guys having me on the show.
Yeah, we're excited to talk about it. And I mean, I guess the best way to start this off, like we got a kind of a sneak peek of the show and got to take a look at it, and it was a fun watch for a Bears fan to like think back to probably my favorite Bears game I've ever watched. It was that was one of the most fun games I've ever seen. Also grueling at the same time, but any Bears fan out there remembers that. But can you tell us a little bit about how this concept came to be?
Yeah, at Vice TV, we are doing a lot of sports content these days under the Vice Sports brand. And, as we are looking to kind of get really creative in the way we tell stories and recontextualize sports history, I think, sports documentaries will always have a place, and we do a lot of sports doc series. But we've been trying to think about how we make these formats different, how we make them feel more active. And this show really does that. And that's sort of where it kind of came from, is like, instead of looking back and sort of sitting people down and doing traditional interviews, like what if we kind of relive these games as if they were live broadcasts all over again? And so the team at Omaha Productions has been phenomenal. They worked with us in developing this out. With Kyle Brandt, who happens to be a big Bears fan, Chicago guy. So he was actually at this game. And of the 6 games we did, this is, the one he was actually there for. So this was exciting for him. But yeah, the show really was just about kind of how do we flip the script on, sports storytelling. And it's been a fun run so far.
Now, it makes sense, of course, to have Brian Urlacher's involvement. But I'm curious, did you have to reach out to him, twist his arm to relive this sort of game? Or is this something he was super excited to join you and talk about and rewatching the game? Again, you were kind enough to let us watch this episode. And, he was very open and honest about saying, oh, I don't remember that. And you can see the enjoyment I got out of the show was you can see him kind of reliving that particular moment. So was this something you reached out to Brian for? And also as a follow-up, Sebastian, how did he become a part of the project?
Yeah, and just to give people a sense, like the way it kind of looks is it's sort of 3 boxes of our Kyle Brandt, our 2 guests, and the full screen is basically the game. It's a hour-long TV show, so we don't show the full broadcast, but we kind of cut it down and have our guests sort of rewatch the biggest moments. But it's it came about looking at, what are the best games, best guests we can get, kind of a diverse slate of guest games across the last, 30, 40 years of NFL history. Omaha kind of brought in sort of their team and had them reach out and kind of got Brian Urlacher interested. I mean, I think it helps when he had something like 19 tackles in the game. I think it was his career high. So, when it's one of, if not best game of your career, maybe it's a little bit more enjoyable to rewatch that. I think at some points we tried to kind of get the other side, the losing team, to join, and those bookings are understandably a little bit harder. So for Brian, I think he had a lot of fun, sitting back and rewatching some of the best moments. Although one thing that really stood out to me is sort of one of his biggest reactions in the episode, you'll see, is the one missed tackle he actually had, which was sort of a forgettable, moment in a 19 tackle game. But it's funny just to see athletes kind of looking back at the one thing, perfectionist mindset that they didn't get. But yeah, so Brian came on, and then Sebastian, Omaha also kind of brought him on. He's a Chicago guy, Chicago fan. So I think for people who are true fans of the sport and of these teams, to sit down for an hour and a half and rewatch it with, one of the best players in franchise history, it's kind of a fun ask. And they had a really good time with Kyle, who's awesome. Kyle Brandt is just one of the best in the business, and he really makes this show pop so much.
Now, I got a kick out of in the show because I remember this happening like after this game too. I was like 16 years old when this happened, but after the game, it was disputed. Like on Pro Football Reference or any stat place, you go, it's 19 tackles.
Right.
To Brian Urlacher, it's 26 tackles. He was 26 out of 27, as he said on the show, because in the Bears' internal numbers and their tracking, I remember this being like talked about with the coaches and stuff after the game. They had him down for 26, even though the stat people had him down for 19, which is always a funny fact to me, of like that you can be that far off from what the team sees to what, like, with something that should be pretty straightforward as tackles.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to correct Brian Urlacher, so he's got, and yeah, it's hilarious.
Yeah. Now, one thing that kind of caught me a little bit during the show, and you mentioned a little bit about how Omaha Productions was so integral in you guys kind of shaping this thing. Was it shaped at all after the Manning cast? Because that's kind of the feeling I got from it, that like it almost felt like I was watching a Manning cast with just different people.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's a whole another beast, and that's live in season Monday Night Football. But certainly there's connections. I think the kind of visual look, it's Omaha, so there's that. But I think this, what ManningCast doesn't have, we have here, and the differences in how you produce it is we know the end result of the game, so it is more of a retrospective. We wanted it always to feel present. Feel active, like you don't know what's going to happen exactly. But obviously, sports fans, diehards who are coming to watch this, they have an idea. So there's some similarities visually, and it's a similar team, but certainly a different format, different show. And it's Kyle Brandt on there. So I could see the connection though.
Kind of jumping on that, as you said, this is one of the most famous Chicago Bears games of all time, and we certainly all know the post-game press conference. What was the challenge for you as a producer, where we all do already know the result, to kind of push this out in a more fresher way for the audience?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think for me and you can see my background, I'm a sad New York Jets fan, which is another story. But, with this game, I really remember it for the Dennis Green rant at the end that we've been talking about. And I forgot about the fact that it was a 20-point comeback without an offensive touchdown scored. And so much of it, was the defense, rookie Devin Hester, which was awesome, I'm sure, for you guys to watch, and for anyone who loves football to see him in those highlights. I mean, I think it was a challenge at first, but we kind of used it as a creative challenge. And I think what we did a lot of, as you'll see, there's a lot of pop-up graphics that offer kind of additional context, things from the game, almost like, sort of the old, music videos where there's little pop-ups that add little fun facts. I think because we know where it's going, we're able to kind of stop and say, okay, this was look at where we are in the game. Like, this easily could have gone this way. If this tackle doesn't happen, this other thing doesn't happen. And so there is a advantage to having that, knowledge. And I think, even though people know what's going to happen, people's memories are, even I'm sure for you guys as diehard Bear fans, you forget all the intricacies and, when the return happened, when this happened. I mean, I think even Brian Urlacher rewatching it forgot that at the end of the game, Arizona had a chance to win the game and missed a field goal. And, so it easily could have not been the game that we all remember it as now. And so, yeah, I think just kind of building the rundown as we built the show out and making it so we're highlighting those moments and kind of that revisionist history was something we tried to do. And then, yeah, the pop-ups adding both in the game and football, but also there's fun, pop culture nuggets. And also just the fun look of the broadcast from, this game is in 2006. We do a game next week. We do the 1986 Super Bowl with Phil Simms. And Mad Dog Russo, they rewatch that game. So the look of the way the NFL has just changed from the shoulder pads to the broadcast, that's a fun thing that, even though how the game is going to end, just the visual look of it is certainly different.
No, that's that I had that thought watching through it of just like, man, these linebackers look big. Like they ain't that big anymore. They're a lot faster, but like less stiff, but they ain't that big, and they're not taking on offensive linemen the way you saw like Urlacher and Briggs doing in that game. But one question that I had is like, I mean, I guess some of this I could logic my way to like, it's the Bears. They're a big market. That makes sense to want to get one of their games. But what made you narrow down to this game to make sure you got in these 6 episodes?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, we have 3 Super Bowls. We do, an NFC Championship game, a divisional round game. This is actually the only regular season game we're doing in this first 6 episodes. And I think one was, Kyle Brandt felt passionate about this game. He was there, added to the kind of memory of it. We also knew we had an opportunity with Sebastian, so kind of leaning into the Bears. Was that Super Bowl season that you guys went on as better than I. And I think the just weirdness of the game, the fact that it was this 20-point comeback without this offensive touchdown scored, again, Devin Hester playing a key role. We have Peyton Manning in each episode from Omaha kind of giving his, short reflection of the game, which is fun. He talks about how this ended up being mean to bring up bad memories, but the team that ended up playing you guys in the Super Bowl. So there's that.
My gears a little with one of his comments at the beginning. I was like, oh, Peyton.
I know. Yeah. But all that combined, I think just made it a really interesting game and kind of a different type of episode than the rest, where again, the playoffs and sort of the bigger impact. This was more about sort of just the bizarre, crazy comeback that happened.
Do you see like these kinds of episodes, in a way you're retelling the history of the NFL to a completely brand new audience, an audience that gets, in particular with the internet, just younger and younger. Do you think that's kind of a challenge that you put on yourself to be able to convey the enormity of like how impactful this game was to an audience back then, when someone else might just be wondering, hey, this is just a week 6 game in the regular season, and you're pairing this up with Super Bowls and playoff games?
Yeah, I mean, again, kind of seeing where the Bears went that year, and sort of the, and I forget exactly where it is, but I think it's in the top comebacks again without these offensive touchdowns being scored. It was Monday Night Football. But I think sports fans, NFL fans in particular, the rabid fans that we're trying to reach with this show, like whether you lived it in real time or know it, I think it's just a fun watch to be able to kind of get and dive deep into a game like this. And I think just all the players involved, again, with Urlacher and him as a, one of the legends of the NFL being there. But, Matt Leinart and, Hester and Briggs and kind of that era of Bears football, I think resonate with a lot of people. And so, yeah, I mean, there are Super Bowls. I think people also kind of, you think you remember, but then you go back and you actually don't remember kind of what happened. And that's where I think this show really shines. Like next week, like I said, we're doing the 86 Super Bowl. I wasn't around for that Super Bowl. And I think it was fun for me as a fan of the league to be able to kind of like watch it. And it feels like it's a brand new broadcast, brand new telecast with new perspective. and new stories being told. So yeah, it's definitely a way to kind of re-look at history if you've already lived through it, and if you haven't, it sort of feels fresh all over.
So you're talking about how like getting a refresh look at it, or like you said with the 86 Super Bowl, one that you've never really dove into before. With this game in particular, was there anything that really surprised you or found like that much more interesting than the rest of it?
You know, it was interesting, seeing, and I forget if it was 3 or 4, but, Rex Grossman had quite a few turnovers. It was interesting to see.
It was 6.
It was interesting.
It was 3 fumbles, 3 interceptions. I don't remember if he lost all the fumbles. But.
So like that was interesting just to see just how many it was. Seeing, not remembering exactly when Hester really broke out, and seeing that this was sort of right in that time, his rookie year. I think that was interesting. But what I was going to say with Rex Grossman was seeing kind of Brian Urlacher still as such a strong teammate, and almost seeming like he's still kind of on the team and, repping his locker room. He was very defensive of Rex and very supportive, even rewatching this game, which I thought was just like, wow, what a great teammate, what a great leader. No matter what, you back your quarterback. There was that. I think the field goal that I mentioned at the end of the game when, again, this all could have kind of, not worked out, and we probably wouldn't be telling this game. Dennis Green wouldn't have gone on that rant, and, who knows what would have happened. So yeah, is interesting. And then also remembering just the impact of this game. Like you have, Matt Leinart there, and, not to say this was the game that derailed his career, but who knows if he wins this game, kind of gets on a run, maybe he continues being the starter. Maybe Kurt Warner doesn't end up taking over, a few years later and taking the Cardinals to the Super Bowl. So yeah, you think of it as like an individual game or an individual play, which it was, but these moments do connect to the larger history of what happened, and you can kind of go down a fun rabbit hole as a fan watching it.
Yeah, to touch on something that you mentioned there, something that I found really interesting in it was like this was Matt Leinart's first career start, right? And he was this highly touted quarterback, former Heisman winner, national champion out of USC, and he fizzled out of the league a few years later. But it was like the way that you heard Urlacher talk about it was like this guy was very prepared. And
Yeah.
it was surprising to hear how prepared that mentally they thought he was to like read the coverages, to know his answers, knowing where his career went thereafter. I thought that was an interesting point.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, sorry, I was just gonna say, like the first drive of the game, even Urlacher's watching, he's like, wow, I didn't realize they held the ball that long. Like they're playing pretty well. And to build that lead, obviously you have to play pretty decent, but you kind of, again, you think about the comeback and the frustration at the end, not the sort of early success that he had in the game. And he played pretty well. Yeah.
Yeah. And I got a real kick out of the great play by the defense that Urlacher kept saying every time that Grossman did something. It's like, that's not Grossman. That's a great play by the defense. Like,
yeah, but it's nice because again, as I mentioned earlier, you get to watch the game through Brian's eyes, and there was a moment of humor where Kyle Brandt brought up that some of these NFL jerseys had like the full names on it. Like it was what was it, Tank Johnson? It was Todd Johnson, and who's the
Marcus Bryant or something like that?
Yeah, something like that on the Cardinals. And he's like, wait, hold on. Yeah, oh, okay, yeah. It's like he's like, I never noticed that before until I just started watching the game. But again, that's I think kind of the appeal of a series like this. Just seeing your heroes, the guys that you grew up watching. Well, I was already old watching Brian Urlacher, but just seeing it through their eyes and seeing a different, like, outside X's and O's. Again, as Q brought up, he's kind of defending the Rex Grossman at every single angle, but then also at sometimes you can see him just watch it as a fan, like, oh wait, I didn't realize we even did that about his own teammates.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's so fun, and I think where Brian Urlacher obviously brings the football acumen, and he was there and lived it. Sebastian Maniscalco, he is hilarious and brings that fan passion, and he's talking about Devin Hester as one of, I think he mentions, his favorite player ever to watch, and that because of the kickoff return rules now, you don't really see those, and you'll probably never see a guy like him again. But I think we also should have a moment where we kind of break down some of the funny crowd shots, and there's these guys with, like, you'll see it if you watch it, but crazy face paint and a wig and a whole kind of crazy look. And, you know, Sebastian kind of gives them a little bit of a, you know, a dig, and it's fun. And you know, we try to balance the football stuff with some of the fun fandom, and hope that comes through for people. But yeah, we kind of really love to see that passion from, you know, you think of him and people see him as one of the biggest stand-up acts of all time, but at the end of the day, he's a fan like the rest of us watching these games. And you know, it was cool to see that side of him.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought he was entertaining on there, and the bit with the paint was interesting, to say the least. As far as like, why does he kind of have purple paint on? But so one thing that you said early in the episode that piqued my interest was about kind of your guys' goals with this, kind of reshaping the historical context of some of this stuff and retelling it. And you know, that's something that's kind of been on my mind for a few years now. Of like, I've looked at the podcast space and the show space, and it's felt like football history is really hard to find quality content for. But I think back to like growing up, like the NFL Network and like ESPN, they had like the top 10 lists, you know, and like the top 10 this, top 10 that. That was always really fun. I'm kind of putting you on the spot with this question, so I apologize. But can you think of any reason why that stuff kind of went away, and what might be driving it back now?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, obviously my opinion here, I think with the sort of like YouTube culture and people wanting to kind of, you know, just dive in and go deep and go down a rabbit hole of rewatching, you know, you can see anything from any moment in history and rewatch it. I think, you know, we're trying to kind of play off that. It's like, okay, imagine you're, you know, rewatch, like, and these games get played over on NFL Network and there's the list, but again, what if you kind of rewatched it, but with the people who actually lived it and sat down with them and go deep on a subject, rather than, yeah, you know, we're so tuned to kind of see highlights and quick clips, but let's actually like go really deep on one game and really like live it.
Like, you know, getting the details of how Brian Urlacher makes sure he gets a fumble from Edger and James, like stuff like that. Yeah,
exactly. Like, you know, we purposely put this on, you know, it airs Wednesday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, another plug there on Vice TV. But, you know, we purposely did that, you know, because it's one of the few nights of the week where you can't watch, you know, there's no live NFL on. And so for those diehard fans who want to go deep, who never have enough football, like I'm sure you guys and me, you know, it offers just another level of, and obviously going back, but still it's as if you're kind of watching a NFL game. And that's, you know, kind of the fun there. But yeah, I think fans are always clamoring for history. It's just, we're trying to kind of twist the way it's being told and the way it's presented.
And Trevor, the last question I have for you is, let's say you were in charge of this entire series. Is there a game, and maybe you're already doing it in this series and you don't want to spoil it? And if that's the case, you know, is there a game out there that you would love to be covered in this sort of way? And again, if it's something you're not allowed to disclose, you did tell us before we started recording that you're a Jets fan. Is there a Jets game in the past that you would love to go back and get these different perspectives from?
Yeah, I mean, we did do it, not because I'm a Jets fan, because it was a great episode. We did do the 2010 AFC divisional game where the Jets went into Foxborough. That was the Bart Scott can't wait game. So we definitely tried to, like, with the Dennis Green, they are who we thought they were, the can't wait, like, look at those sort of viral moments. So that was fun. The last home Jets playoff game was 2003. I was a young human, I'll just put it that way, and I was at that game. So the Jets beat the Colts and Peyton Manning 41-0. I don't know if Omaha and Peyton would have wanted to do that game, but I would have loved to do that. We didn't talk about it because I think it's mostly relevant just to Jets games. I mean, I think that, like, you know, there's been so many great Super Bowls, it feels like, over the last 15 years. You know, I think the Nick Foles Philly special, like, that would be a fun one to go back and relive. Last week we did the Rams Titans, that, you know, 99 Super Bowl with the Kurt Warner and Cedric the Entertainer sat down. We did the 2020 Super Bowl, Patrick Mahomes' first Super Bowl, with Heidi Gardner and Eric Stonestreet. And we had Chris Jones, which was awesome, from the Chiefs on. And like I said before, we did that Cowboys, Michael Irvin, Emmitt Smith game. So, Yeah, I mean, I think Super Bowls, of course, are always fun and just so impactful. But what's great about this show and, of the NFL really and the history is just there's so many great games over the decades. And it was overwhelming to try to like come up with what's our 6-pack that we're starting with. So yeah, there's a lot of room to kind of experiment, but those are a few that I would look at. I think that Nick Foles game in particular would be a lot of fun.
Just whatever you guys do in the future. 1, avoid the double doink, and 2, avoid the 2010 NFC Championship game because there's nothing fun involved with either of those.
I got you. I mean, 85 Bears. I mean, that would be before the Giants one that we're talking about. That would be obviously a fun one. Just I don't know. I don't know all the history there. You guys know better than me, but one game in that era. Although I feel like there were so many blowouts from that team, right?
Yeah, there's one that I want to say was actually pretty similar to the Cardinals game, which is sad. But one from the 85 playoffs where I think they held the Rams under 100 yards, but all their scores were defensive. They won like, I want to say 16-3 or something. That one could be interesting from that era. That's not just like a total blowout. But yeah, I don't know. But
I feel like,
oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, not just trying to, when I asked you that question, trying to think back to games that I would like to watch. This is not necessarily Bears related, but I don't know if you are doing an episode on the 28-3 comeback, that Super Bowl, the Patriots. I think that would be really cool to kind of get a perspective from
Get Gronk in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
games like that, just because, again, we know what the result is, but it's just, even though that game wasn't really that long ago, just to get a player and, an outside perspective of it, I think that'd be fun to watch.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you're getting at like what's fun too about this show, just thinking about like with fans, and we did some social posts and got some submissions. It's like everyone has a memory in a different game. And, we're talking about some of the big Super Bowls, but there's probably so many games where it's, oh, this was the first game I went with this person or did this sort of personal anecdotes that we wouldn't necessarily do on the show, but it just sort of, everyone has these emotional connections to certain games. And that's what like sports is, why we love sports, right? It's about those, memories and reliving them. So yeah.
Speaking of which, I feel like I can't talk about this game without bringing up my emotional connection to it. So I was in high school and I'd had some injuries from so I've been out of surgery for like a week now, and my aunt got me a gift. It was a jersey for the MVP candidate playing quarterback for the Chicago Bears, the 4-0, I think it was, Chicago Bears at the time, Rex Grossman. September NFL Player of the Month. Rex Grossman, sure thing by now. 4 straight games, he's crushing it. So I'm wearing my brand new Rex Grossman jersey, getting ready for Monday Night Football, watching the game. I'm devastated by halftime. I'm like, I can't turn it off. But this sucks. And then I just like I remember I was watching it with my grandpa. My grandpa's like, I'm gonna go find something better to do, like, And then they come back and they keep coming back and keep coming back. It's like, they're not doing anything on offense. How are they doing this? And then I remember I slept on the couch that night. I had ESPN on the TV all night long, and it just kept replaying the Denny Green conference like all night. It was just, I kept hearing Denny Green over and over. You want to crown him? Crown, like, it's just great. So that is burned into my memory.
Yeah.
I was a little older. I had just graduated college when this game was happening. And I remember, again, it was Monday Night Football. We were all really hyped about the Chicago Bears team. They were undefeated coming into the game. And a bunch of us had basically rented out a side of a bar. And, of course, the game started the way it did. A couple hours before, we had already started enjoying ourselves. It started the way it did. And then, we, at that point, at halftime, we're all demoralized. Like, oh, my gosh, I can't believe, like, we did all this for nothing. This is this same old Bears. And then the third quarter starts, and then the fourth quarter starts, and we're just kind of looking around like, how much fun have we been having? Like, is this really happening on this TV, or are we just all imagining it? And I do remember the Devin Hester return, because I think they mentioned it on the show, and I wasn't sure if I remembered it correctly, but that was his first return for a touchdown that season.
On a punt.
He
already had a kick. He had a kick return against Green Bay week 1, I believe.
Got it. Yeah. So I just remember that happening, and it was like just the ultimate exclamation point to that game. And that really, really just got you excited about like, hey, we're watching a historic defense here.
Yeah. I mean, there's something magical about it, just rewatching it, and I can't imagine sort of living it as a fan. And I think it goes to show you, and to your grandpa, don't ever turn that dial when your team's on. You never know what's going to happen. And the other thing I was going to say, I don't know if you guys probably didn't see this. It was sort of a minor thing in a press conference last week, but Mike McDaniel, the Dolphins, he was talking about the Jets-Dolphins matchup. And he said, he was asked about the Jets against Tampa. He said, the Jets are who we thought they were. And, you hear that. And if you look on X or anywhere, like, that quote never goes away. And I think, again, people sort of just think of that just happened, but there is a whole story, how that came to be. And that's, what this whole game was. So, hopefully people kind of fun.
Yeah, that's a quote that non-Bears fans and non-Cardinals fans, just anyone who casually watches the NFL, they know what to attribute that quote to.
Absolutely.
And I swear to God, well, one thing, I love that it brought back the, I forget the name of the Cardinals punter, but the dude who had like the last face mask that was just like a one bar way down here. That he was like grandfathered in, I remember, to like not having to go to a normal face mask. But also I swear, and this never went in the stats anywhere or anything, but like I remember watching Comcast Sportsnet Chicago like the next day, and they zoomed way in on the field goal attempt, and it was like, you swear you can barely see like a pixelated version of Hunter Hillenmeyer's finger like tipping the football. And like, so I just always need to mention that with this game. If Hunter Hillenmeyer deserves a block kick.
I love that.
But Trevor, why don't you remind everyone one more time where they can find this episode and what time it's on tomorrow night and all of that, or on October 1st, Wednesday, October 1st, but where can they find it?
Yeah, NFL Classics After Further Review airs Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern on Vice TV, wherever you get your Vice TV. Also on demand after that. You can go back and watch the first 4 episodes as well on demand. And then next week, October 8th, will be the season finale where we're doing Phil Simms and Mad Dog Russo and watching that 86 Super Bowl with Kyle Brandt across all the episodes. So yeah, hope you guys tune in. Vice TV, check it out.
That'll be a fun one too. But so one more question.
Actually, I'll just say right now, the first episode, the Cowboys Packers one, that's actually on YouTube right now. So after this, if anyone wants to check that out, it's just type in NFL Classics After Further Review, Cowboys Packers, you'll find it.
That actually fits perfectly because I was about to ask for any cord cutters out there. Where might they be able to find this? So on YouTube a little bit later, that makes sense.
Yep, exactly. Check it out.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Trevor, and we hope you have a wonderful evening.
Yeah, I really appreciate you guys having me on, and I'll be rooting for the Bears rest of the way. You guys, I like what you're doing in this season. So.
Actually, before you go, what are your thoughts on Justin Fields?
Yeah, we got that connection there. I mean, look, I think the Jets have never really had a running quarterback in my lifetime, and I think having someone who has the ability to, at least when the pocket collapses, can actually move is helpful. But there's so many other issues beyond him around. He needs a lot more help. So he's not the problem. I don't know if he's this answer either.
I think that's a fair answer.
Yeah. I'm sure you guys know that.
Yeah, we've been through the debates and the civil wars over Justin Fields.
We're still going through it.
Yeah, it will never die.
We'll check in later in the season with you guys.
All right. Well, thank you, Trevor.
Have a good one.
All right, Sonny, any more thoughts on that game before we close this thing out?
No, it was just a fun rewatch, and I do hope that if you're listening to this podcast or watching this on YouTube, that you go check it out. Again, Trevor was nice enough to send us a sneak peek of the episode earlier, and I'm not gonna lie, I had a smile through my face, just watching. It's we don't exactly have a lot of those moments as Bears fans to remember a dominant team like that, and they joked around about it early in the game. Like, I think the first tackle of the game, there's like 4 or 5 Bears guys who like all swarmed around the player. Yeah. And Sebastian, made a joke about, how he misses that. And he wishes the modern day Bears could go back and watch that sort of tape. So, if you're a Bears fan, whether you lived through that or you didn't, especially if you didn't, I'd go back and watch, because that truly is, one of the best Chicago Bears teams of all time. Unfortunately, couldn't get it done in the Super Bowl, but it's also one of the best stories when it comes to like an individual regular season game.
There's actually a story from 2 weeks ago about Texas Tech football going to Utah to play a game, And the night before, they're all at the hotel, the whole defense, and the coach is showing them Peanut Tillman highlight after Peanut Tillman highlight of punching the football out. Next day, they play at Utah. They forced like 3 fumbles in the first half. It was just beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. So, like, I mean, it can still be done like that. It's just there's not as much emphasis on it, I guess. Lovey was one of a kind. Like, you don't find many that team in general was one of a kind. Many teams that buy into that takeaway philosophy that heavily. Like, we talk about all the time in analytics that like takeaways are not sustainable, right? It's not a sustainable way to live. You look at the numbers for Lovie Smith, it sure as hell was sustainable for him. So like, and for this Bears team, like they were special in the way they bought into that. And like, that's something that we got to live through and witness, because like that doesn't happen in the NFL where a team has years and years of 20 plus turnovers.
It's funny you say that, because like, I feel like I go through that argument all the time, you know, like whether it's me trying to understand the modern day analytics, like, and what you just said verbatim is what I hear all the time. Like when, you know, I cover the University of Illinois every single day. And so they had 5 takeaways week 2. And, you know, people are saying, well, yeah, but that sort of thing is not sustainable. It's like, yeah, but they've kind of been doing it for a couple of years now. Like there has to be some sort of correlation, you know, sure. It's not a necessarily, I don't know how you would define it. It's not a skill, but in a way it must be a skill, because it, you know, it's just, I guess this is one of my biggest arguments with analytics, that they seem so steadfast in saying that it's not repeatable, because I think at some point when something happens so often, you just have to acknowledge that maybe there's something to it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so this is the way that I tend to think of it. I think interceptions are much less sustainable than forced fumbles. But forced fumbles come with a degree of luck, because you need to be able to recover the fumble for it to matter. But like, so to me, interceptions are much more about the QBs you play in today's NFL. I think back then you could stuff was just kind of different with the way quarterback was played and the way defenses were called. But it has defensive, like coverage concepts have progressed so intensely, and quarterback play has gotten so much more just insane to some degree, of just like, you're not going to get those same type of opportunities against good quarterbacks anymore.
Sure.
But with fumbles, like a team that fully buys into gang tackling and technique of how to get the football out, I believe that is something that will always be sustainable, because it's just work. You're outworking your opponent at it. Like, so, I mean, I don't know. I think that's something that you can always kind of find. And that's different than strip sacks, because that's a whole different thing to me. But like when it comes to ripping the ball out from a ball carrier, that's something that can be trained and improved to get to a certain level of like eliteness of.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
But Sonny, why don't we close this thing out with a good old fashioned bear down, and we'll get out of here.
All right, everyone, enjoy your bye weeks, and Q, bear down.
Bear down.